Hello. I just want to say I really appreciate all the love and support, and I hope you enjoy the stories and the readings today as much as I enjoyed reading them. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode. When I was about 6 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a girl in a white dress praying at the bottom of my room. We had an old dresser table back then with a statue of Our Lady of Roses on it. The girl, who I immediately thought was an angel, sat on a stool, and she was facing the holy statue, her back to me, but I could also see her reflection in the mirror. She had a peaceful aura about her. However, I crept out of my bed and darted past her and ran to my parents' room. But I couldn't get their bedroom door open for some reason. I crept back to my room. I didn't go back in, but I peeked around the corner to see if she was still there. She was. And she was praying silently and didn't look at me or anything. But this time, there was also a baby there, just on the dresser table, laughing and smiling away at me. And I should add, it was not in a scary way at all. The baby wore a blue t-shirt. I didn't go back into my room that night, and since I couldn't open my parents' door, I slept on the stairs. The very next morning, I told my parents what happened. They told me that the girl was probably my guardian angel, praying for me, and that the baby was probably my younger sister's angel. Being 6, I thought that was strange because I thought the baby was a boy. And ever since, I still didn't believe he was her angel. Fast forward to now, I'm 29 years old, and I had my first baby boy last year, and he looks the exact same as that little baby all those years ago, and he doesn't stop laughing and smiling. He's the happiest baby, and I think the angel was my son. Anyway, this experience has stayed with me all my life, and the reason why I can't doubt God's existence is because I've seen it with my very own eyes. I can't ever doubt it. I've always had sleep paralysis since I turned 18. I used to have it about 6 to 10 times every night when I was 18 to 20 years old, living in an old military dorm room. It always started the same, with the same entity. I would always see his torso and head. His voice mocked me when I prayed. Literally sounded like the low-toned voices horror movie depict of evil spirits. After about 2 years after that, I'd have sleep paralysis maybe once to twice a month. I am 37 now, and I live in a new place in a different state. For the past 3 years now, I've had it every month, but it's always during the full moon. I know this because I kept a log of the time and dates it occurred. I always wake up to see a dark figure by the doorway of my bedroom. It goes always when I rebuke it in the name of Jesus. It happens so frequently, I don't even get scared anymore. Well, last night was weird. I was dreaming randomly about being in a bathtub, nothing scary. But I woke up because I felt I needed to pee. Then the sleep paralysis hit me. I saw a man who looked dead because his color was grayish with his back towards me. I panicked and I closed my eyes and I started praying. Once I regained full consciousness and control, I immediately opened my eyes and saw a 7 to 8 foot dark figure with red eyes standing in the doorway. I blinked several times and even rubbed my eyes to make sure it wasn't an anomaly, but it didn't go away. I got so pissed because I felt violated. I began to rebuke it, and it went away. I hate this. I don't know why it happens to me every full moon around 2 to 3 a.m. I have a feeling it sucks the positive energy or light out of me for whatever it needs it for. I'm so sick and tired of it. Can anyone else tell me if they felt this or had any similar experiences? Last night, I think I had sleep paralysis. I closed my eyes and suddenly I woke up. I feel like I saw two forces of energy. I couldn't move. The energies weren't strangling me or anything. To be honest, I don't remember much right now. All I just remember is the feelings and sensations I felt. I felt panicked, that I couldn't move. I was aware of what was going on. Definitely, there were two energy forces. They weren't doing anything to me, I don't think. I just saw them. I'm so confused right now. A lot of things happened that day that I think contributed to me seeing or experiencing this type of paralysis. I went thrifting in the afternoon and I brought some clothes home. What if some ill energy was stuck to those clothes and now is latching themselves to me? Before I went to bed, I remember seeing videos on TikTok about spirit guides, and I remember saying to myself, I want to meet my spirit guide, so maybe I met my spirit guide. Or maybe the way I slept and woke up messed with my head or something, and let me see things I shouldn't have. Let me explain more. So that night I slept from 7 to 9. I woke up at 9:30 and did some homework and went back to sleep at 11, and I haven't gotten much sleep this week. What's really bothering me is the clothes, because what if it is true? I go to thrift stores so often and now I just don't know. I'm lost and I'm confused, is all I can say. I don't know what to do or what that was. It was my first time, and I pray it doesn't happen again. I've been wondering what this encounter I had could mean. I'm not sure whether it's paranormal or just a subconscious thing. This happened when all schools went online after the pandemic hit. I'd often sleep in online class because online school just made everything easier. One day, while I was falling asleep, I went into what's called the hypnagogia state. It's when you're half asleep and half awake, I believe. I'd get into this state often during online class, and usually I'd have normal random dreams. Anyway, one day when I got into this state again, it was different. I was in my room, laying on my bed. My surroundings felt so real. I heard some heavy breathing beside me and turned to the corner of my room to see a completely black creature with long black hair and long nails. It was bent down and it was eating something from the corner of my room. After staring at it for a while, it turned to me and I immediately jolted awake. I was scared shitless. I looked to the corner of my room and nothing was there. Fast forward 4 months later, I developed an eating disorder due to family issues. I take food and hide it in that very same corner of which where I saw the creature. After recovering, I remembered this dream and started to connect the pieces. Whatever that creature was eating, it was in the exact same corner where I'd hide food. So, what is this encounter? Should I be worried? So, I work in a large bunker complex from World War II and stayed for a night shift the other day. I'm an editor, so I had my headphones on most of the time. Every now and then, though, I thought I heard some music from somewhere, but I just brushed it off because I was tired. At around 1 a.m., I went out for a smoke in an area that basically only me and my bosses can access. It's an old stairwell. It was used to transport heavy cargo that doesn't fit in any elevator. As I approached the door, I once again heard music, but this time it was clear as day. As I opened the door, it got really, really loud, like as if someone was sitting with a violin at the bottom of the stairwell. I work in the fourth floor, so no other floor has any direct access to the stairwell except the very bottom one. Needless to say, I was weirded out, but thought, huh, maybe some composer uses their free time and practices here. Yeah, I know that kind of assumption, but it was the only explanation that I had in the moment. The semi-social person I am, I went down to see who was playing, and I just wanted to say hello. Since the music was actually kind of beautiful, it reminded me a bit of the classical Bioshock music and was, well, as far as I can tell, being played by one single person on one single violin. However, after I stepped down like 4 or 5 steps, the music abruptly stopped. Not in the way that you stop a recording. I could actually hear clattering and Foley sounds from handling a string instrument. I went down all the way and looked for any open doors or some way for this person to have gotten in here. However, there was nothing and no one in sight. That would suggest someone just playing music there. So I was kind of disappointed. I went all the way back up. The bunker's floors are about double the normal height, so I had to walk up about 6 floors. But just as I stepped back into our hallway, the music, it just started again. So I went down. Surely enough, there was no one there. At that point, my confusion turned into being kind of creeped out. I double checked if every door was locked, which they were, and if the elevator, which had been out of service for a while, worked again. Maybe that was a possibility of how they got in. But no, it was still stuck below ground floor, as it had for almost a year. So I thought, okay, every door is locked, and the only way in here is to have a key through one of the doors on each floor. There's 5 floors in total. So I went back up and I waited. Since I was sure to hear someone unlock a door and step into the stairwell, which nobody ever did, I reached the top, and at eerily that precise moment, I heard weird violin sounds first, like someone mildly plucking the strings. Then the music set in again, and it was loud, like really loud. So I went down again, only to find nothing. Again. At this point, I was actually wondering if I was just too exhausted and starting to hallucinate or hear things. That's how I explained the music to me for the rest of the night. It was only the next morning that My stupid brain realized that I recorded the music for the first time. I heard it loudly, so there's no chance of this being just in my head. Can anyone explain what the fuck may have been going on? I'm really confused. Hi guys, I've been reading this thread for months now and only just jumped the gap today to tell you what occurs for 6 years now in the child hospital I work at. I am working at the technical maintenance for the operating rooms and I often stumble upon operating nurses and orderly. One of them, Becca, told me the ghost of a dead-on-table girl. She was just lingering in the operating room where she died. It seems she's been spotted in the corridors connecting the operating rooms together and in the storage room. She told me whispers could be heard at night, mostly around 2 p.m. in the entry lock of operating room 3. I literally laugh at her face when confronted to what I considered utter bullshit. So, she invited me to join him one night. 1 week later, the main surgeon, who saw it too and believes firmly this was a ghost, gave his permission for me to spend the night on the operating ward. After 1 p.m., we sat on the floor of the storage room and tried to remain silent, but we saw and heard nothing. While having a coffee in the staff desk, we began to hear suffocating sobbings. The noise was really weird. It sounded like echoes. 10 minutes later, we saw a black cloudy shape in the corridor. It seemed ascending toward the ceiling. It suddenly started to look like a child, except the legs kept that vapor aspect. Everybody was totally speechless, so we basically didn't take any pictures or videos. It's been staying on my mind a lot recently. I decided to try again next month. But for the sake of me and my mental state, I hope that I don't get to see what I saw again that night. I'm not too sure how to go on about this, but 371 Bridge Street used to have a house there. There was a family with a daughter. She had an abusive boyfriend, and her parents were not the best. At 18, the daughter became pregnant, and the parents decided that she should try to hide that she's pregnant and get an abortion. The daughter did not want to get an abortion and ultimately hung herself on the tree that's to the right of the white barn that's still on that property. The parents left the rope still hanging there and connected to the tree and just buried her on that property somewhere, not even in a cemetery. Since she committed suicide, she could not go up, but since she also had a baby in her, she could not go down. Hence, she is stuck as a spirit on this earth. After a while, the house was torn down, which I'm not sure why, but the 2 barns they have are still there. Someone owns the property and are cleaning up inside the 2 barns. Now, here's why I'm telling everyone they should not come here, or they might get possessed. Me and my girlfriend started dating in early January of this year. She has gone to this barn with her friends to hang out as a getaway from everyone else. She isn't technically a medium, but she can feel energy and used to be able to see spirits when she was younger. A few months ago, she went one time. A spirit got attached to my girlfriend and her friend. They both had these same type of anxiety attacks where they started breathing really fast, saying they can't breathe, coughing in and out of consciousness, keep waking up, passing out, a cycle of all that for a few minutes, then it stops. When my girlfriend had these happen, when I was around, she would usually tell me to get away from her and to not touch her. From what I learned from my girlfriend's friend's ex, the other girl, who also got the spirit attached, would have the same problems. One time he told me she woke up in the middle of the night and sketched out a very detailed tree. They took the sketch to the barn later and they both realized she perfectly sketched the tree that the girl was hung on. He also told me that the spirit eventually gave up on his ex and solely started focusing on my girlfriend. Now, from yesterday afternoon, around 2:30 p.m., I'm at work and my girlfriend is all by herself at the house. She went into the bathroom to do her makeup. Our bedroom and closet door are both shut. She told me out of nowhere she heard my voice and it says, "Hey babe, come here." She got excited and looked around and saw the bedroom door was open and the closet door was open with the light on, and saw a shadow against the closet door. Thinking I'm in the closet messing with her, she goes in there expecting to see me, but saw no one. After being a little freaked out, she spam texted me asking if I'm home and that she's really scared. I told her I wasn't home and to stay in the living room. When she was headed to the living room, my cat was standing in the hallway and was looking at her. Now, he's not the type to just randomly meow or be mean, but he started meowing like he saw another cat, one of which he hated. That sort of loud, aggressive meow. He eventually stopped and ran to the door to be let outside. After a few minutes, my girlfriend had to use the bathroom and locked the bathroom door. She started hearing faint tapping on the door and my voice again, saying something along the lines of, "Babe, I'm home. Come here." She stayed in the bathroom until I got home, which was only like 10 minutes later, and she said it felt like everything was back to normal once I got there. Now, later that night, we're driving around with the friend's ex in the back, and we told him about what happened earlier. We started talking about our personal paranormal experiences as we were heading down Beverly Roads towards Bridge Street. She started to doze off while driving and immediately hit the brakes and pulled over. We switched seats and I started to drive again. That's when it began. Me and the guy in the back first was like, "Oh, she's having another anxiety attack. Let's try to keep her awake to tell her it's okay." But after a while of that and not working, we started really focusing on what she was saying. Things like, "Don't touch me. Take it off. I can't breathe. Stop and let me go." I looked back and the guy in the back and told him I don't think this is an anxiety attack. That's when the laughing started. It sounded kinda evil. So me and the guys started saying dumb stuff like, "In the name of God, leave her body now, evil spirit." And she just kept saying, "No." And the little laughter again, but she eventually snapped out of it and told me a girl is trapped in her and wants to go home, that she's scared and she's in my girlfriend's head. She kept asking her, "Where is home?" And the spirit only kept replying with "home." That's when she realized who this girl was and where she came from. She passed out again, and the spirit took her body and stayed there until we got to the road where the old house is on. She would look at me with a blank expression, saying, "I don't know you," and to not touch her. And then she looked back at the guy in the back, saying she knew him from when they were with the girl with glasses, which is his ex. She would point to which turn to take, getting more excited each time, then started playing with some of the buttons in the car, slowly tapping each one, running her fingers over some of them like she's never seen this before, and turned the music up, which she instantly hated. And as we were driving, she would point quickly to where to turn, and was getting more excited each time we took a turn to get closer. Once we got to the end of the road and pulled up to the front gate, she was so excited, saying for me to stop when I pulled up. That's when my girlfriend started breathing heavily again and passed out for a second. And she just woke back up. She looked at the window to her right and put her hand against it. Then the guy behind her said, "Oh God," and looked down and said that he saw her. During the ride back, my girlfriend said that she saw the pretty version of her and how the girl put her hand on the window as my girlfriend did back to her. And the guy saw the ugly side, the hung version of that girl. My girlfriend told me that the spirit does not want them to come back, how there's lots of evil spirits there and something bad can happen next time. There's also a cemetery next to this property as well. I could go into more detail, but I've already explained and said a lot. I really want to learn more about this property and the history behind it all, but I can't seem to find anything else interesting about it online. So this is not my story, but my dad's. My dad was always pretty interesting, and he had a shitload of paranormal experiences that happened in his life. Here's my favorite story from when he was a kid. My dad grew up in the era of the late 60s. He was raised in a pretty rural part of Texas. About 2-hour drive north of Houston. My grandpa was a big fan of hunting, and so was my dad. One day, when he was like 12 years old, he woke up before dawn to get ready to do some hunting with his brother, who was about a year younger than him. My dad goes to wake up my uncle, but he didn't budge. So my dad said, "Fuck it, I'll go alone." He leaves the house and ventures into the woods with a flashlight, his rifle, and some trail mix. He walked for a while, enough to where the sun was coming up and no longer needed the flashlight. After about 30 minutes of walking, he felt a sudden chill, like something was watching him. He gripped his gun and looked all over. When he found nothing, he kept walking. Suddenly, he heard a twig snap. Now, here's where it starts to get creepy. My dad was standing still, waiting and listening. Then it started. He could hear someone laughing. It sounded far away, but the laugh chilled him to the bone. Thinking it was his brother, he called out to him, told him to fucking stop messing around before he shoots him. Yet, no response, only soft laughter. So my dad got scared and started walking back towards the house. Now, he was quite a distance away, like at least an hour of walking. As he walked, he could hear laughing. It sounded much closer. He started to jog, but it seemed the faster he moved, the closer the laughter got. He got angry and started yelling for whoever was following and laughing needed to stop and that he was armed. The laughs became hysterical, unsettling, and coming from all around him. The laughter stopped, and a deep voice said, "I'm gonna get you." This scared the shit out of my dad, and he took off running, dropping his snack and flashlight. The hysterical and aggressive laughter started back again, and was so loud. My dad dropped to his knees and covered his ears. He felt all the pressure around him and felt like the world was getting darker. He summoned all of his courage and pulled the trigger to his rifle. A single gunshot silenced the laughter. Whatever was chasing him was gone. He quickly got his shit together and bolted. He didn't stop running until he got to the porch of my grandparents' house. He told his dad what had happened, and my grandpa told him to never go into the woods alone, that the woods hold even more secrets than he knows. My dad continued to go into the woods to hunt, but never alone. Even when he was an old man, he would go hunting in those same woods, but never by himself. I have suffered from sleep paralysis on a regular basis since I turned 1 year old. Every single sleep of my life has either been an immersive or lucid dream or just plain out sleep paralysis. You might think I'm being dramatic when I say this, but I am 100% sure that my first ever memory was actually sleep paralysis. To start, I've moved at least 20 times since I was born, and I have memories of sleep paralysis in every single bedroom I've ever had. We moved from my first house when I was around 1 year and a couple of months, so my first experience was a little bit after my first birthday. At this point, we lived in a 2-story house. I have 2 older brothers who shared a bedroom in the bottom story of the house right next to my bedroom. Our parents' bedroom was just up the staircase so that if their bedroom door was open, they could, more or less, see me sleeping in my crib. I was notorious for waking up in the middle of the night and screaming bloody murder at that age, according to my mom. There was absolutely nothing they could do to put me back to sleep as long as I was still downstairs in my room. It quickly became routine for my parents then to just bring me upstairs as fast as possible whenever I started screaming, mostly to spare my poor brothers from listening to my hysterics all night. Whenever they brought me upstairs, however, I would fall asleep immediately and never wake up, not until my parents had to physically wake me up the morning after. This was the routine up until my first ever experience. As per the routine, I started screaming my lungs out around 1 a.m. according to my mom. She picked me up as usual and brought me upstairs to their bedroom and put me in their bed, where I quickly fell silent. Again, this was the routine that they were used to. Now, this is where my first ever memory starts. I remember being tucked in between my mom and dad. I distinctly remember the residual scent of my mother's perfume mixed in with the smell of her breath on my face. My dad's hand was stretched over my legs and drawing my mother closer as they tucked in around me. Eventually, I woke up, slightly confused. I didn't know why I was awake. I remember feeling very confused, and I wanted to try to explore the room to try and find out what had woken me up. No matter how hard I tried though, I couldn't move a single muscle in my body. My eyes darted around the room, desperately trying to discover the source of my discomfort, feeling absolutely helpless. I tried screaming out to wake my mom or dad up so that they could help me, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make a single sound. I distinctly remember the feeling of my tears running down my cheeks as I was laying there mortified over the fact that I couldn't make a single sound. That's when I saw them, 2 peculiar figures, standing at the edge of the bed. Their forms, illuminated by the subtle glow of the moonlight creeping through the curtains of the window behind them. The figure on the left was the tallest, and the one on the right was around half a head shorter. I couldn't really see much detail on their bodies, as their bodies looked almost as if they were out of focus. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't focus on any detail. Their faces, on the other hand, I wished I could delete certain details. I want to reiterate, again, that I was just barely a year old at this point. My reference bank of people at this point was my parents and my two older brothers. Seeing these two figures standing at the edge of the bed, I remember immediately thinking that this had to be my brothers wearing masks or something. The worst thing, though, was that even though I thought that the figures in front of me were my big brothers, I was still terrified. Their faces held the most grotesque grimaces I've ever seen, and I still do not understand how I imagined them. The only way I can describe how the expressions were is, imagine if a fox and a badger were taxidermied. But the taxidermist's main inspiration was the uncanny valley. I spent years believing my brothers hid these horrible animal faces and would spend those nights at the end of my parents' bed just staring at me, just tilting their heads as they examined my small form, gasping, fighting against everything keeping me from making noise. No matter what I did, though, I could never break eye contact with them. I know my description of my first ever sleep paralysis encounter might seem a bit long and too detailed. The thing is, though, although the subjects of my sleep paralysis have changed hundreds and hundreds of times since then, they've always just stared at me. There's been talking, sure, but it's never been directed to me. I've had sleep paralysis where I've heard my entire family being murdered. I've heard people screaming outside that my house is on fire and that everyone needs to evacuate, but no one has ever talked to me. In 22 years of sleep paralysis, almost every single month, there was always at least one figure just standing at the foot of my bed, just staring at me, keeping eye contact. They've never, ever asked me a single question. They've never said anything directly to me. They've only ever stared at me until last night. The last few weeks have been filled with the weirdest kind of sleep I've ever experienced. I haven't experienced much sleep paralysis for the past few years, an isolated experience here and there, but nothing other than that. I used to sleep 10 to 14 hours every time I had to sleep, and the time I did, I had to sleep in. This was especially true during weekends. As long as my blinders were up, I could sleep until physically disturbed. The past few months, however, something has changed. No matter how tired I felt, I could not sleep longer than 6 a.m. at most. It absolutely does not matter how late I stay up. I still wake up at 6 a.m. on the dot. It's not that I feel like I've slept enough at that point either. I'll wake up exhausted and go to sleep even more exhausted, and still wake up at 6 a.m. only to repeat the pattern. Yesterday, I went to sleep around 11:45 p.m. I've been sick all week, and I had a lecture today that I was really excited for, and I wanted to make sure I was well rested for the next day. As I've said, I'm a 22-year-old student. I live alone in the same apartment I've lived in for 2 years with my cat that I've had since I was 8 years old. I haven't heard a single sound from a neighbor in the entirety of these 2 years. I went to sleep yesterday around 2 a.m., absolutely exhausted. My cat fell asleep in between my legs, and I can't even say that I had any dreams. That was honestly my first sign that this wasn't going to be a quiet evening for me. My cat did wake up a couple of times in the early night, poking me and trying to get my attention. After 15 years, I know exactly how it feels when she's the one to wake me up. There is absolutely no room for confusion. I woke up at around 3 a.m. last night. Immediately, I was struck with this sudden small feeling I'd never felt before in my life. I couldn't open my eyes. No matter how fucking hard I tried, no matter how fucking hard I wanted, I could not open my eyes. At this point, I tried my hardest to scream as loud as I thought possible. I could feel the weight of my cat sleeping peacefully on my legs, even though I still couldn't see her. I screamed and I screamed. I pushed and pushed and tore my voice apart as hard as I fucking could to escape this horrible unholiness. My forced mutinism and blindness keeping me hostage as my body still laid in my bed, completely paralyzed. My only connection to reality right now was my cat. I could still hear her purring. I could hear the water fountain trickling in the background. I could still hear her making biscuit whilst pawing me. The sound of it all in a place of my forced silence was almost deafening as I laid there sleeping. That was until the point it all stopped. I struggled against my own body, trying to force my eyes open, to no avail. The harder I tried to force my eyes open, the harder and more painful it became. I couldn't get a single glimpse of what was happening. As it happened, though, I felt a large hand grab the lower part of my face and push it down into the dark. The hand kept a firm hand on my face, and as it kept down, I could hear this one voice reverberate almost inside my ears as they were screaming at me. Hey, hey, Ellie, listen to me. No matter how much I kept trying to scream, I just couldn't fucking make it stop. The voice just kept repeating the same thing, never allowing me to see anything until I begged it to stop. The screaming kept on going for at least 45 minutes. It felt like, before, I was physically able to open my eyes and make them stop. I'm terrified to go to sleep tonight.